like to call to order the work session for March the 2nd. Our first order of business, other than to wish Dr. Seuss a happy birthday, is to ask Michelle Smith, our two-time Olympian gold medal in softball, to come forward and give us a report on some fantastic events that have taken place in Clearwater recently.
Thank you very much. It's always an honor to be up here and to talk to you, Mr. Mayor Creticus and council members. First off, I want to say thank you so much for the support of young girls of the sport of softball. Obviously, very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, the City of Clearwater, Parks and Recreation Department, the entire city in general has just been extremely supportive, as is the county of Pinellas County. Little bit of update on the success of the event. Our ratings for ESPN were up well over 50% from last year's, what we like to call our championship game, which was on ESPN2 Sunday evening, or the final game of the event. So the growth is obviously there. The number of attendees was up significantly as well, so the number of tickets sold, which means more people coming into our amazing area, our great city, and being able to see some of the best athletes in the entire country. Obviously, Team USA, being an Olympic year, was also playing ball, which was also a great inspiration. We've had clinics, so it's just a great all-around event for everybody to partake in, and I truly, truly thank you for all your support and supporting the young girls. My hope is in the future we can continue to keep the event in Clearwater and Pinellas County, in hopes that this is such a great diamond sport area with the success that we have with spring training for the men in Major League Baseball. My hope is that we can continue to support the sport of softball, build a stadium, and bring in even 3 times the number. We had over 12,000 tickets sold. I think we could easily get to over 30,000 tickets sold if we have the right facilities, and the economic impact of that would be significant. Last year's economic impact was over $3.5 million to the city of Clearwater in this area. So, and that was with tickets sold of about 8,000. So if we can triple that, you can just see, I think a stadium would make sense. We could pay it off in a couple of years. So, of course, I'm always, pushing for the girls to have the facilities just like we have for other sports. So I will be glad to meet with anyone or talk with anyone or throw a little BP to anyone who needs it. Take a couple swings. But Mayor Creticus, I specifically want to thank you. You have been such a loyal supporter of women's sports, whether or not it was the Junior World Championships, some of the women's gold championships from Team USA Softball, the collegiate game. You're always out taking pictures and being a huge voice for women's sports. So thank you very much for that. Again, it warms my heart that we support our women. I also have a gift for you. It's a signed flag from the U.S. Olympic team.
Oh my.
I hope you'll be able to enjoy. USA softball team.
Well.
I should have worn my USA softball shirt that you gave me. But really, explain to everybody. I mean, we had 16 teams here from all over the country. I think Washington.
Correct. University of Washington, UCLA. So we have teams from the Pac-12. We have teams from the Big Ten, the Big 12, all the different conferences, mid-majors, you name it. USF from across the bridge was over. So it's a great event, and there are so many universities that want to take place in this event and be a part of it, because they understand not just our weather, but the ability to play some great games and then bring their fans and enjoy the beaches.
Great, yeah. You gave us something, but we have something for you too, Michelle. We know you have a couple of gold medals. You have been a great supporter not only of softball, but you've helped us out with our Clearwater for Youth program. We had that banquet over the weekend, and Michelle's there offering scholarships, promoting not only women's softball, but really the area. And so on behalf of the city of Clearwater, we're changing the locks at the Eddie Moore complex, okay? But we are going to give you a key to the city, okay?
Thank you.
To thank you for everything that you've done to promote softball, to promote women's softball, to promote the area. And we just wanted to say thank you for all those efforts that you've done for us.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And just to put you on the spot a
Yeah.
second, you were talking about a stadium. How large of a stadium are you looking for?
I think if we had permanent seating of somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000, and then expandable with an outfield fence, we could bring in another 4,000 to 5,000 and actually seat 8,000 to 10,000 people for large events like this. It would make a lot of sense, and then we could still host Little League events. We could host state events, all-star events. It would be used year-round. We could bring in international events. I mean, it would be an asset not just for the international game, the collegiate game, the NFCA, but for our local citizens as well. Because slow pitch is still a very big part of a lot of events and games that are played at the Eddie C. Moore complexes. So I think if we could be in that ballpark of, again, 4 to 5 permanent seating with additional ability to bring in stands, we would be the top community in the entire U.S. having a stadium.
Not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but it would be nice if ESPN might want to help fund that stadium,
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly. And I think it takes a team. It's like anything.
Right,
It takes
yeah.
a village to do the right things, get the right group of people together. So.
Great, thank you very much, Michelle, appreciate it,
Absolutely.
thanks,
Thanks,
okay,
Mike.
take care,
Thanks.
thanks. Why don't you go say hello to everybody?
Okay. Yes. Thank you again.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Council, Michelle referenced our staff, and I see Mike Lockwood and Carla. I'm not sure who else from Parks and Rec is here. Chris, come on up, staff, because, y'all worked tirelessly for like 2 or 3 weekends in a row, and we just want to thank y'all for the work that y'all have done, because come up front, up so everybody can see you on the camera, Mr. Lockwood, help our ratings,
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
But this is just part of the team that was out there the entire, 2, 3 weekends in a row, because we've had separate tournaments, making sure that the teams from all over the country had that Clearwater hospitality. So thank y'all for all that work that y'all did. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is City Manager, 3.1.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Gina is going to give us a City Hall site selection update. And then I think at the end of that, Michael Maxwell will talk about next steps.
All right, good morning, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development Department. I'm here with Tara Kivett and Amanda Thompson, who are also on the City Hall site selection team, as well as Micah and Michael, who also gave us some input and guidance. What I'd like to do is first talk to you a little bit about the process that we use to get to our rank sites, and then turn that over to Harvard Jolly to talk about the feasibility study that they did on the top 2 rank sites. If you'll recall, at the November City Council meeting, we presented to you our proposed selection criteria and got your buy-in. We also showed you the 9 sites that we were considering to evaluate. And after you all had some discussion, you asked us to add an additional site. So in the end, we evaluated and ranked 10 sites. We also, since that November meeting, hired Harvard Jolly to prepare a feasibility study that includes some conceptual studies and sketches for the top ranked sites. I'd like to just refresh you about what we looked at when we developed the site selection criteria. We assigned weights to them based on the order of importance that we felt that they brought to the process. Obviously, the most important one from our standpoint was how a site could help us implement our downtown redevelopment plan, and that's why it has a total of 4 points. We considered if the site had a prominent location, and if it was visible, and would it reflect City Hall civic importance as a community gathering space. We also evaluated if that site could anchor and attract new development to strengthen our downtown as an activity and economic center. We also looked at a few other things such as transportation access and its proximity to other city facilities. The second most important criteria revolved around real estate considerations. We looked at things like property ownership, potential for public-private partnerships, whether the site was located in an opportunity zone, and how ready it was for construction. The third-ranked site centered on site characteristics, and that was awarded 2 points. We looked at parcel size and configuration, site conditions and access, impacts on the surrounding roadway, and things of that nature. Then the last criteria, while it's a very important one, we felt that in the order of things, it was the least important. And the main things that we looked at with that criteria revolved around whether there were costs to acquire land, whether we owned it, and construction and operational efficiencies. So, as I mentioned earlier, we evaluated a total of 10 properties, and as you can see up on the map, we looked at sites all through the downtown plan area, and we tried to look at a variety of sites in terms of property types, the size of property, as well as ownership. We applied the site selection criteria to each site and assigned points across the 4 criteria, and then after that scoring, we reviewed it again, not only against the criteria, but also within the category. So we compared how we looked at site A with regard to, say, implementation of the downtown plan with another site. So we wanted to ensure that we had consistency throughout the application of the criteria. And based on that exercise, we narrowed it down to our final rankings. So the detail of the points and rankings were provided to you in a table that was attached to your agenda item so that you could see how all the sites compared to one another and how each site compared to other in each category. And based on the scores, at the low end, we had a site that got only 2 points, and then up to the top ranked site, which had 9.25 there at the high end. So because there was a 4-point difference between our first and third ranked site, we felt that that was a large enough difference that we only moved forward with evaluating further the top 2 ranked properties. So the top ranked site is the city-owned property that's located on the northwest corner of Myrtle Avenue and Court Street south of the Municipal Services Building. It's labeled as Site B on the map, and this site received a total of 9.25 out of 10 points. This site scored the highest in implementing the downtown plan due to its great location. It's on 2 state roadways there at an intersection. It provides excellent visibility and prominence, and we felt that this intersection also has prominence as it's often seen as the entry into the downtown core. Because of the numerous vacant and underutilized property in this area of downtown, and the fact that the site could potentially free up other institutional land for redevelopment, this site scored high in that category as well. The site also received the highest score in the real estate category because there's a high potential for public-private partnerships due to the size and allowable development potential, and also because it's in an opportunity zone. The site is also mostly construction ready, with the exception of a warehouse that requires demolition. The site also received the maximum 1 point in the cost category because it's currently owned by the city and the CRA, and it can provide flexibility in that it can accommodate both a city hall or a government center. So the second highest ranked site is located on the east side of Myrtle Avenue across from MSB, and that's labeled Site A on your map. This received 7.25 points out of a total of 10, 2 points below the highest ranked site. This site also scored well in the implementation of the downtown plan due to its location on a state roadway, its adjacency to undeveloped and underutilized property. It's also located on Prospect Lake, and it's close to other city facilities. It also scored high with regard to site characteristics due to its configuration and because it's located on Prospect Lake Park, and it's also partially in the Prospect Lake Regional Stormwater District. The site didn't score so high when it comes to the real estate category, even though it is located in an opportunity zone and the CRA owns a small piece of the block. The big unknown with this site is that it's held in private ownership, and we're not sure how willing this owner might be willing to sell, and then it also requires demolition. The site also didn't score very well in the cost category due to those unknown acquisition costs, even though it provides some operational facilities located in close proximity to other city buildings. So with that, if you'd like, I can either answer questions or we can move forward and have Tim Feaster and Ward Frizzalowski of Harvard Jolly do the presentation of the feasibility study and show you some concept studies.
Any questions, council? Mr. Albert?
Yeah, I noticed on the list of 10 that the library was listed there as number 7. How would that, I mean, we're talking about City Hall at the library?
If you recall at the November meeting, you all asked that we add the library for consideration of City Hall, yes, within the library.
Okay, so we're not going to be starting any construction until we talk about where we're going to put City Hall as far as the library going forward with the plan?
Well, I think that we were moving forward, and I'll let Michael answer that question.
I'm just a little confused. Well, I know we talked about it, but I was like, I kind of, we got two things going on. We got a library remodel, and that's supposedly starting like soon.
Right.
And then I looked at the Harvard Jolly report. They talk about substantial space for City Hall. I don't know how that would be incorporated into this structure unless it, just went.
Well, I think if you'll note, it didn't rank very high. It was number 7 out of 10 sites in terms of its ranking because we saw that there were a lot of issues to make that happen.
Okay, well, just curious.
Yeah.
We haven't altered the path for the library renovation, so it's
Okay.
still moving forward.
Okay.
All right, well then I'll turn it over to Ward and Tim, and then after their presentation, then Michael will talk to you about next steps.
Good, thank you, Gina. Good morning, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm Ward Frizzalowski with Harvard Jolly Architecture, and with me is Tim Feaster of Harvard Jolly and Amy Weber of Harvard Jolly. So Gina did a good job of describing the two different sites that we were asked to take a look at, and so I'll move on to the next slide. We were asked to look at 3 different options on each one of these 2 sites. The first option is to look at just a city hall, a standalone city hall, and with surface parking that would accommodate the city hall. So in this scenario, you would keep your MSB and keep the parking garage, and so that would be an option number 1. We'll show you some graphics on that. Option number 2 would consider doing not only a city hall, but combining that with what happens at MSB for a new city government center. And in that scenario, we would look more at surface parking in conjunction with still utilizing the parking garage that currently services MSB. But then this option number 2 would allow you to do something else with MSB, to repurpose it or sell it off. And then option number 3 would be looking at a new city hall combined with MSB for a new city government center with a parking garage, which would then allow you to look at repurposing, reselling MSB and the existing parking garage if you wish to do so. With all of these, we looked at different criteria, and that was part of your packet, so I won't go into detail here, but the cost of the land, partnership opportunities, redevelopment, operational efficiencies, the cost range, and cost offset for each one of these options. So with that, I'm going to ask Tim to just walk us through each one of the different options, and then we'll open up for any questions.
And as we look at these 6 criteria, they were majorly set up to be yes or no answers for these questions. And you'll notice, I'm sure as you have already, that there's a small blue chart associated with each option that gives the simple yes or no answer to these questions. So as we move along, we're going to start with Site A, which was described as being to the east of the existing municipal services building across Myrtle Avenue. This is partially owned. Approximately 2/3 of the property is owned by a private entity, so it would be a land acquisition issue. Also, there would be a demolition cost for existing buildings, about 5 different buildings that are there. The first option on Site A, option A1, again, as Ward described, this is a standalone city hall, 2 stories, approximately 44,000 square feet, and we're implementing a surface parking lot which accommodates about 145 spaces in the city parking lot. This would accommodate the functions of City Hall for those either visiting for events, as well as the employees. The employees of the MSB would still be utilizing their building and the existing MSB garage, but this would provide visitor overflow for the existing municipal services building since their current parking lot gets filled up quite often. The building and parking lot would be on one block, as we see here in the plan view, so that proximity it doesn't create a long walk for any visitors. But for the visitors of municipal services building, they would have to walk across Myrtle Avenue. This, of course, is the least expensive option for this site, option 1. As we look at option 2 for site A, option A2, we're looking at a combined city hall and municipal services operations city government center. It's approximately 100,000 square feet, and in this configuration, it's 4 stories high. Again, we're using a surface parking lot on site. In this instance, we increased the parking capabilities to 160 spaces because of the larger capacity of the building and all of the visitor parking having to be in one parking lot along with that. However, the MSB employees would still be utilizing the parking garage that is in existence now. You can see that the municipal services building itself has been grayed out, indicating that it is vacated and available for sale or for repurposing as the city sees fit. So that being the case, the police department would still also utilize the existing parking lot, but this doesn't maximize the new development opportunities for this site. Moving to the third option, option A3, this is essentially the same as option 2 with the exception of the fact that we're implementing a 4-level, 630 space parking garage rather than surface parking, because this would then take care of the needs of not only City Hall, but also the municipal services building functions, as well as utilize spaces for the police department. Of course, that could be something that could be viewed as inconvenient by the police department because of it being 2 blocks away rather than across the street. And for obvious reasons, we're using not only a larger building, but a new parking garage. This becomes the most expensive option for this site. So now moving along to site B, which is completely city-owned. There's no need for land acquisition, nor is there a need for demolition of multiple buildings. Again, the first option, option B1, is a 2-story standalone city hall, 44,000 square feet. But because this site spans 2 smaller blocks, we would have to utilize parking not only on the site of the building, but we're looking at using reverse angle parking around the north block of the site as well. So we have 65 spaces that are confined to a surface parking lot on the south block, but the majority of the north block utilizes reverse angle parking spaces, about 75 of those, and those would provide for the overflow of MSB visitor parking. This, again, leaves opportunity for the sale of the existing municipal services building in option 2 of for site B. And I believe I skipped over the fact that on option 1 for the new city hall, that leaves the majority of the north block available for either sale or a public-private partnership that could be utilized there. In option 2, again, we're using surface parking on the majority of both blocks. However, this also allows for a public-private partnership for either the sale of the parcel or the use of a mixed-use building that's required for frontage liner along Myrtle Avenue for the surface parking lot. So it gives you opportunities to partner up with private entities or to parcel that portion of the land off and sell it. The configuration of this new government center with City Hall and the municipal services building combined also allows for a public plaza in the rear of the building, because we can make the surface parking lot on the south block a little bit smaller, giving the ability to hold functions outdoors for the public on this space as well. On the third option for Site B, again, the same configuration as option 2, only we're utilizing the parking garage, 630 spaces, 4 levels high, but again, leaving that liner space for a public-private partnership possibility along Myrtle Avenue, and utilizing the combination of the new city government center with the MSB and the city hall. That would vacate both the municipal services building that is existing as well as the parking garage. And I'd like to mention that in this instance, as well as option 3 for Site A, that parking garage could either be sold, or if the city deems it necessary, it could be utilized as a 24-hour public parking garage rather than just being used for nights and weekends as it is now. Now, because PSTA had actually expressed a desire to use this site as well for a transfer station, we were asked to provide a fourth option that would make this a possibility. In this fourth option, this consolidates the new city government center and the parking garage onto the south block of this site. It does decrease the number of parking spaces, but it is still above the code requirement for the city development for parking spaces for this space. It also continues to allow for a public partnership, a public-private partnership on a liner of that parking garage, and allows for 3 city blocks to possibly be sold or repurposed. And as we see in option 4.1, this indicates or depicts the possibility of utilizing the north block of Site B for a new PSTA transfer station. It's a little bit smaller than what they were envisioning, but it accommodates the needs that they had expressed they had for that. So the main differences between sites A and B: Site A provides closer proximity to the existing MSB for option 1. There's definitely a higher visibility aspect, though, to location on Site B. It's at the intersection of Court Street and Myrtle Avenue, which are 2 highly traveled state and U.S. roads. Site A is partially owned, about 2/3 of that, by a private entity, so there is land acquisition costs associated with that, while Site B is completely city-owned. Site A does not provide for public-private partnership opportunities in any of the options, whereas Site B provides for such in every option. Those possibilities exist in every option. Site A allows for some new development opportunities with the sale of the existing municipal services building and or the parking garage, but Site B allows for the most opportunities for new development because of the fact that it can allow for more land to be sold or repurposed as the city deems necessary. So that ends our portion of the presentation. We'd like to thank you very much for allowing us to be here today, and we'd like to open up to any questions that you may have, and then we'll allow Ms. Clayton to finish up with the presentation.
Questions, council? Mr. Hamilton?
I'll start with a question. I've got plenty of comments later. Why, in all of this work, why was the north parcel of B never considered as the location for the city hall? Because that corner to me seems to really create a very functional campus type thing, and nobody has to cross Myrtle Avenue. Nobody has to, you've got the Pinellas Trail you got to cross to get to the police station, you got to cross Pierce Street to get to the MSB. So why was that site is not considered in the presentation that we're getting? I just don't understand that. The corner of Court and Myrtle has great potential either. I don't see why PSTA would probably love that site, because it's got great ingress and egress into their routes. And if PSTA we can't come to an agreement with PSTA, that parcel has the greatest commercial development potential.
Yeah.
So I'm having a hard time understanding why the north parcel of B wasn't considered as a site for this.
Well, a simple answer is, you could take the image that's up on your screen right now. We could actually flip those two. if you deemed the higher and better use for someone else was the southern block, it does fit. Those blocks are, they're not exactly the same size, so we would have to take a look at the southern block is a little bit larger than the northern block. But if you didn't want the high visibility for City Hall on that corner of Court and Myrtle, and you'd rather us take a look at it on that northern block, we could take a look at doing that and then selling off the southern block if that was what you
Because,
want to consider.
I mean, the visibility factor isn't high on my thing. I mean, look where our city hall was. It wasn't on a, it wasn't visible by any major roadway in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's where the city does its business. It's not about being visible from the street. We do the business inside the building. So that's my biggest question so far, because, and I'm sorry, Mayor, but this is going to be more of a comment. Parcel A, I just think the fact that it's just mentioned that we're even thinking about it, the price just went up because you're dealing with the city. The city would be buying it, the price just went up. There's remediation on that whole block because of the auto parts and auto repair, and used to be a service station and everything else. There's going to be major remediation necessary on that whole block. The cost on that block, just to me, I don't see where I could conceivably go there.
Ms. Clayton?
I just wanted to say, we had internal discussion about the point that you're raising, and I think the reason why we focused on the corner is because the downtown plan talks about the visibility and prominence of a city hall, and we felt that that location at this major roadway and entry point into the downtown gave us an iconic location. So that's the reason why we selected that piece over the other. We don't think it's a good location to put a transfer bus facility, as our entry into our downtown. So we just thought the better use of the site was for a city hall based on that prominence and visibility factor.
Well, I'm more of a functionality guy than a.
Any other questions, Council? Mr. Hamilton, you took my question out of my mouth. And ever since I got on council, North B, to me, makes the most sense for a city hall. I wish that a year ago, when we decided to move from City Hall to a private office tower, we would have just stayed at City Hall and concentrated on North B, and we could have had that building built by now, or at least under construction. I agree, it's the only one that makes any sense to me. It's been the only one that's made any sense to me from day one. Mr. Maxwell.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew that as far as PSTA is concerned, the initial design that they've shown us includes multiple parcels. So not just the one in the corner, but also the one that we're currently talking about. I think one of the other reasons to potentially have it on either the southern site, the one in the corner, or the northern site, where the MSB is currently, which is very difficult, of course, is to keep that continuity. If they have an interest in multiple blocks, and you all have an interest in providing them multiple blocks in the future, going in the middle there does limit their ability to have that larger space. So that's another decision point. We haven't gotten there yet. They haven't had final design, but that is in their minds at the very least.
Talk to us a moment about MSB. How old is that building? How much more useful life does it have before we start getting?
MSB was constructed in, I believe it was 95, so it's about 25 years old. We've been operating off of about a 40-year useful life, but we need to do some additional assessment as well if we're going to look at potential merging of the government center. So there's still some work to do to figure out if the government center piece is the correct one. We're not sure about that yet.
Okay. Mr. Albright?
Well, I have comments too, but I'm trying to ask a question here. The top two were not really my choice. I was on number 4 because being on the PSTA board, I know PSTA has been looking at taking both A and B of the B parcels. both blocks of one on Court Street and the one on between Pierce and Franklin for an intermodal center, not just a bus station. And it would be a mixed-use intermodal center. And I always thought that we could do some kind of swap with their small bus station on the Garden Avenue site. Maybe even combine it with a parking garage that we were going to be badly needing when Imagine Clearwater gets underway for parking there. It's a nice central location for parking. Could accommodate City Hall. In fact, so I got to make a question out of this. You know, if I just wish that we would have had a little more information on that site, and I know PSTA wanting the two sites isn't really going to be enamored with the smaller of the two sites here. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Abhishek, their engineer, yet after seeing this plan, but definitely we'll talk to him tomorrow on that.
Mayor, if I could address why the PSTA county parking lot was lower in the rankings and why it wasn't selected, is that while it is on Fort Harrison and it has some limited prominence, we are very concerned about adding another institutional use on a corner that already has 3 institutional uses. So in effect, by adding City Hall, we're really creating a dead zone in downtown, and we were looking at how to better implement the downtown plan, locating City Hall in a visible, prominent location that also would spur redevelopment of surrounding properties. And there's so many underutilized properties in this section of downtown that it ranked consistently higher for those reasons.
And I can understand that. I would really prefer a retail wrap or something with a parking garage on that site. But still, PSTA to me is always, and I used to own part of that property on Court that you're talking about, and I was asked by a previous administration to sell it to the city before Greenlight for an intermodal center, and I reluctantly sold it because I thought it would be a good idea for an intermodal center there. So I'm really not enamored with putting a City Hall site on the site that I really didn't want to sell to begin with, another use than an intermodal center. So anyway, it's good we're having the discussion. I can put my parking garage discussion with a retail wrap for the old PSTA site. That's kind of where I was. We're talking about City Hall now. I really like the number 1 site better than, you know, the ones that are south of the MSB, and a combined MSB City Hall on that site.
Which site which one you
You're
like
talking about
better?
A, not
Talking about site A.
A, you like site A? Is that what you're saying?
Site A, yeah.
Another thing for us to consider as we move forward with the transit study is, you know, how they can make that design of the transit facility meet the downtown design guidelines. And I think we have some concerns about how that might be accomplished, and in particular what that may look like on this highly visible corner there on the intersection of Court and Chestnut. So from our perspective, you know, potentially opening up MSB as well as the site that's labeled as future, that might be a better location and fit for the PSTA use.
Mr. Horn, where were you trying to get us, or what were you wanting to hear from us today?
Okay, all right, number 1, we really have not had a serious discussion about a City Hall site location. Pam and I talked about the necessity to really provide you with much more detailed information. Whether you agreed with it or not, it was important for you to have a framework by which you then could make some decisions about how to go forward, as opposed to just expressing personal opinions and preferences, because this is very, very important to all of you and to the future. So rather than just make it a general discussion, we really wanted to provide you a little bit more substance to spur your conversation. That's number 1. Number two, it's pretty obvious to me that the downtown plan may resonate more with the staff than it does with you guys. Because what's driving kind of what we did was based on the downtown plan. So if the downtown plan isn't resonating with you, then that's what's generating some of the questions about, well, why did you do this or why did you do that? So what I'm looking for today is that first reaction now to a more substantive presentation of information for you all to, all five of you, to say, you know what, I heard what you said, here is kind of where I'm coming from. And I think you started out that way, Councilmember Hamilton. I'd like to hear everybody, and I think you had shared some thoughts, so I think we need to hear from the other three about what direction you would like this to go, because some of this you may not agree with.
Mayor?
Mr. Poglaze.
I may, thank you, sir. Could you zoom out? I can get my computer up and running today. Could you zoom out to show the MSB site, the larger map again, please? Or one of the previous slides. Well, it shows Site B.
There you go.
Yeah, that one, thank you. And proximity to the MSB. So I would agree with Mr. Horn. I mean, right now, the downtown plan, as far as it relates to City Hall, is not absolutely the most important thing. Downtown plan is going to require a lot of pieces of that puzzle to come together. And I don't know that the first piece needs to be City Hall. If we get that private investment and other development coming, I think what makes the most sense is, and I'm going to take this two parts. I would agree with Mr. Councilman Albritton that an intermodal transportation major facility is a landmark development that will be very beneficial to our downtown core, our beach. It's extremely important. And for the past 13 years that I've been involved with downtown, that has been the preferred site. And the conversations with PSTA has been to have that there. So in relation to City Hall, the next part of the conversation that I'll address is, I think it is important to keep our government center convenient and close to not only the police station, but the existing MSB. To have a true government center where all activity of the government is in one convenient place. So I don't know that Site A necessarily has to be there. There's a lot of negatives with Site A that makes it difficult. But for instance, one thing we hadn't, and since this is a throw out there anything conversation, one of the things we hadn't considered, or I heard even talked about, was we own the MSB building, we own that existing garage. Those are two sites that I'm looking at right there. Police station's right there across the street from Pierce. So you have this little 90-degree angle there. I think everything we're talking about, MSB combined with City Hall, would fit on the two existing sites where, we own them, that's a plus. Demo would be expensive, or maybe there's a retro, but then everything's all together. We have the intermodal center where I think it makes perfect sense to have that. So that's just something that I noticed in the conversation and the points that were made that might even make sense. Do you understand where I was going with that?
Mr. Kondo.
Several reasons I don't like A. One, the cost is unknown for the acquisition of the property. Two, to me, it makes no sense unless you build a bridge across from A to municipal services. You've got to have continuous crossing of Myrtle on foot to the other buildings, unless you build on A, municipal services and City Hall. And I think it's too far away from the police department and the other garages. So I'm leaning toward both sites B. The north end makes a lot of sense. so does the south end as kind of a beautiful gateway to the downtown from that intersection. And I think we ought to think about using both of those sites, especially since we already own them and there's no extra cost for development. I kind of agree with the mayor that it makes sense to keep it with across from the police department and municipal services. Municipal services still has 15 more years worth of life in it. And I think we ought to use that life until it becomes too expensive to maintain.
Mr. Hamilton?
Well, I think we're to the point where Ward can sit down. I don't know if we have more questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys,
Yeah.
if we need you, we can call you up.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
But I'm sitting here, first time I've heard, the MSB building, when it was constructed, was given a 40-year lifespan. That's ridiculous. If we're only building buildings to last 40 years, we need to quit taking low bid, because that is absolutely asinine to only get 40 years out of a building. I mean, that just boggles my mind.
But there was a decision made in the mid-90s, so.
Oh, I know,
Don't
and blame it on,
get
we
me
can
out.
blame that on the people sitting on the council at the time. That is absolutely, that just blows me away, to say we've only got 15 more years at the MSB building?
Well, if I could clarify, we're using the IRS standard. This is just for the financial modeling that we were trying to figure out if the cost efficiencies were there to potentially have a government center. So we would expect that when we go into the design phase, the first part of the design phase, that they would look and use the building condition in helping us decide whether it's just City Hall or it's both City Hall and MSB in one building. So, it's just a number at this point. It's not to say that it's going to fall down in 15 years or anything like that. It was just a planning number very, very early.
Now, the other thing, I think what we need, and I don't know how we go about doing it, but I need a presentation, I think we need a presentation from PSTA. Show me why you need both of those parcels to build the intermodal system you need. Because either one of these parcels, either one of the B parcels, is larger than the parcel they have presently. So I think with proper design and everything, I think one of those two parcels could fit what they need. Now, might not fit what they want, but there's a difference. As I told my children growing up, and I tell my grandchildren now, is that a need or a want? Because there's a difference. And it's, I'm sorry, my personal, to me, the two best sites for City Hall all along have been the north section of B, the north parcel of B, or when we do the switch with, when or if we're able to do a swap with PSTA, because I still believe wholeheartedly that the parking where the bus terminal is today on Fort Harrison Park and Pierce and Garden, that's where we need a public parking garage, because it's a very short walk anywhere in the core of downtown, period. That's where the parking garage needs to be, and City Hall could conceivably sit on top of that. But those are my two sites. Like I said, parcel A, we just drove the price just by mentioning that we might be thinking about that site. We just took the cost of acquiring that land, we just bumped it.
Do you have anything else to say, David?
No.
Okay. Well, to Mr. Hamilton's point and to Mr. Poglace's point, we've been waiting for PSTA to come up with a plan for that site for at least 13 years.
They have come up with a plan.
But they haven't presented, they haven't done,
But
they're still talking. They don't have the money.
that doesn't matter. They still came up with a plan. It went to Gina.
But what's our responsibility? Is our responsibility to the citizens of the Clearwater or to PSTA? So what we're talking about now is what's in the best interest of the city of Clearwater. And the points being raised, where are we going to serve our citizens with the city hall? Mr. Pogle's raised an interesting conversation because I have always said that we need to have all of our employees in the same building. It's ridiculous to me to have a city hall over here and 3 blocks away to have an MSB. So if there's some way that we can do a combined city hall MSB, and then that would free up North A and B for PSTA in 13 more years to come up with a plan for us. Or we can do something else with it. But I really do think we need to start concentrating on doing what the citizens of Clearwater, when did we put aside money in Penny for a new city hall building? In Penny 2 or Penny 3?
Penny 3.
Penny 3, because this council, whether it's this one or previous ones, has refused to address the issue because we don't want to spend the money. Well, so what do? We go into a private tower on the 5th floor, 6th floor. So let's start talking about what we need to do and get it done for the citizens of Clearwater. And if it's the possibility of merging, a city hall building with an MSB building, whether it's on the B, whether it's at MSB, or whether tear down the garage and build it, let's just start talking about doing something like that and get some specific numbers so that we know what we're talking about and what we're looking at.
And I agree with you on that. I think a combined building is the way to go because we've been talking with planning about redoing the building department into more customer friendly. That's going to take money, and so we don't want to do that until we figure out if we're going to be combining. And I think that's a good thing.
So what's emerging out of this conversation is direction, that you want us to focus our attention now on a single building that puts everything in it. Is that what I'm hearing you say, as a council?
I don't have a problem with it.
That's what.
I mean, the numbers scare the hell out of me. If we're gonna tear down the MSB or whatever, and we're gonna build a combined center, those numbers scare the hell out of me. I'm telling you. I mean, we've got $6.8 million set aside to build a new city hall, and we're talking about a $50 million project.
50.
Or something.
50.
Huh?
50.
No, it doesn't have to be that.
It's like $40 million. If you do A with acquisition, everything else.
We're not talking about A.
I'm just saying the numbers on this are gonna blow you up. I mean, because what numbers we got now are gonna be conservative numbers. And it scares me. It absolutely scares me. But we could build, again, a city hall that houses what we have in the 6th floor at our office building right now that we're in. We can build a city hall to take all of that and have some additional space for necessary growth or whatever, put it on the north section of B and have a campus. I mean, walking, 100 feet across the street is about the same as going up an elevator to add another floor.
Mr.
Or
Albert.
whatever.
I have a question for, I guess, Harvard Jolly. In the combined City Hall and MSB, you figured 100,000 square feet?
Yes, that's a placeholder, though. We didn't go through and do what's called a building needs analysis or a building program. That's being talked about as a next step.
Okay, so hold that thought. When we were talking about a combined thing with the county and the city, what was because I know the numbers weren't right on that. Is that what we were looking at, is we needed that much space, or?
We were looking at 44,000 square feet for City Hall.
Just for City Hall?
Yes.
And so what do we have in the MSB? That
60.
67.5?
And we just reduced that down, assuming
Okay.
some operational efficiencies based on the design MSP.
Right.
But Micah can detail what we think we need to do moving.
All right, well, that
forward.
explains to me the 100,000, so, thanks. Thank you.
So, Mayor, we have another piece of information that we need to share before I come back and ask you guys to do something more specifically. Amanda, you had something you wanted to share briefly?
Yes, Amanda Thompson, Community Redevelopment Agency Director. As part of this, we worked with Colliers International, the commercial real estate brokerage, to give us their insight on if these different properties were sold, what would they potentially be redeveloped as? Because there's so many moving parts to this. You know, if we build one thing here, we might be able to sell off this property, and how will they influence each other? And so they pulled together all their market research and looked at the sites on your screen and what would be most likely for redevelopment in our market right now today. And they looked at all of the region, what could happen. Our highest potential for redevelopment would be something like a Walgreens or a CVS. So in these locations, they'd be looking at really single-story, most likely standalone retail, right? Because that's going to be driven by the vehicular traffic counts. So that's the most likely redevelopment use. The second most likely would be apartments, right? Would be a multi-story residential type building, not necessarily condos, but apartments. The third most likely use would be another kind of short-term hotel stay, right? So just like the Marriott Residence Inn that we have now, that would be a third most likely use. So those were the kind of partnerships that we were looking at, that we would see for public-private. I also had them specifically look at transit and transit-oriented development. And in Collier's opinion, PSTA is not considered a premium transit service, right? You're not looking at like a Brightline train or, you know, one day if it's built, a pod, right, that uses magnetic levitation, right? It's still a bus system, and still a fairly limited bus system. So Colliers did not see, in their opinion, a lot of opportunity for someone wanting to partner with PSDA to build some type of mixed use or transit oriented development. And I don't take that as a death sentence that nothing can happen, but I think that means the onus will really be on us and PSTA to find the right partner to really sell it and to create a kind of design that would be exciting and interesting, and probably not investors from this area, investors from outside of the area who are used to more types of transit-oriented development. Because the fact is we just don't have that level of density of people in downtown yet for that to make sense to a lot of developers. So I say that to say that, you know, there are a lot of moving parts, but that's what we would most likely be looking at, you know, happening for resale. So just knowing that whatever we're doing, wherever we decide, that we're going to have to continue to be partners in the redevelopment. And we all need transit. Transit's extremely important. And looking at the plan that PSTA presented, I will say that they are a little bit behind the times and what other cities are presenting for federal grant funding in terms of their design and layout and the mixture of uses that they're showing on the site. We went through this when I was in Metro Atlanta. Decatur had 3 transit stations, bus and rail, within our city limits. We went through redeveloping all of those sites. It's very tricky and it's extremely competitive. So I think that as we continue to work with PSTA, we've really got to push them, you know, to take chances and you know, they might not get everything the way that they have imagined.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so, did we,
Run through it if you'd like.
all right, go ahead and get through the next steps so we can.
Sure, the next
Bring this
steps,
in.
you know, we've talked about a number of them here about some of the information. Our staff's recommendation was to move forward in the next 60 days, 60 days draft an RFP that has sort of 2 parts to it. The first part would be focused, to be sort of like a 15%, much like we do with Imagine Clearwater, and be focused on identifying, you know, some initial site work issues, and also doing the review for space planning to look at the cost efficiencies, long-term cost efficiencies, because it's a scary number in the short term, but we believe that there may be some long-term cost efficiencies that are created. So we want to make sure that those are vetted out. And then after that 15%, completes, we would then make the decision on whether or not it would be a government center or a city hall only. So what we would like to do is draft that RFP, and then prior to putting the RFP out, have some final decision on which physical site you would like to go to. That was our initial plan.
So listening to everybody, what I would need is some firm guidance from you as to what it is we're building. And I don't know whether you can do it now or whether you need to have a meeting in order to do it, but I'm not sensing that there is complete agreement. So how do you want to approach this? I mean, because now I'm leaving this conversation basically thinking that at least the majority of you want us to build a building that has everybody in it. And that's not what we presented to you, so that's.
Mr. Kondo.
I expressed my doubt about that, but I'm not opposed to it, if it can be shown to be cost-effective in the long run. Then let's invest now for the long run.
Mr. Albritton.
I agree with Amanda that there's a lot of moving parts on this, so I would like to have more conversation on this. I'd like to have meetings, because just looking at this report from Harvard Jolly, I'm starting to get other ideas that maybe we can move things around and make things, the things that I would like to see happen. So I would suggest that it's more than just figuring out that we need a building and then where we're going to put that building. I think I need to have some more conversation with staff in the interim, and then come back to this. That's what I would like.
Mr. Pogwise.
I was just going to say, probably the correct course of action would be what Councilmember Albritton suggests, because 3 weeks there's going to be a new council in here. But correct me if I'm wrong, some of the options that you showed us did incorporate MSB and City Hall.
Yes.
It was like either A, 2 or 3, or B. So, I mean, I think that is a consideration that I think you and I agree probably mostly on that. Close proximity to the police station. If we don't incorporate the police, I mean, to me it makes sense to put government services. That suggests that anything you need within your government, MSB, City Hall activity, you can get. And the police department across the street, or at least in close proximity with a parking garage, makes the most sense to me. And then, and we own all of those properties with the exception of A. So there is a lot of property freed up for private development. Whether or not we can bring in PSTA to become a good partner and participate in the downtown plan is yet to remain to be seen. But so I support everything altogether, or at least close proximity.
Mr. Hamilton.
Well, again, I really need to see the PSTA plan, and I want PSTA to, I mean, they need to be, it's time to, or get off of it, because it's, show me what you really need, and explain to me why you need both of those sites, because I'm having a hard time buying that right now. I need, and we've been talking about this for years, and PSTA has never made a presentation at all to any of us, other than our representative on the PSTA. But again, I don't see a big difference between having everything under one roof where you go up an elevator to different floors to see the department, or have to cross the street to see one department from, if you're in 1 million, have to go across the street. To me, that's not a big deal. And it's the least expensive way to achieve what we need. And again, it's what we need, not what we want. But it achieves what we need, so.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
I really think we're at a point in time where you all can be most helpful to Councilmember Albritton as the PSTA rep. You've got to think about the history of kind of where we've all been, where PSTA has been, where we have been. PSTA's had difficulty in lining up funding, you know, to move forward with some of their, you know, ideas, which is one of the reasons why you haven't seen anything. But now with Councilmember Albritton firmly in place as our rep, and he's a part of their board, he needs to have expectations expressed to him from the council about what he's empowered to ask for from PSTA, so we as staff can work with the PSTA staff and see if we can provide that information that you all want to see from them. I mean, it's a partner. We're working together here. But there are lots of reasons why, you know, we haven't progressed as far as we would like. And I just mentioned some of them. And funding is a key part of that.
And I think that's a good point, Mr. Horn. PSTA is strapped, and I think we all realize that. But if they're just going to build another bus station, then Site A, Site B may not be in the best interest of the city of Clearwater. Site B was a key point when we were talking about green light and an intermodal, but that's gone by the wayside now. So if they want to just do another bus station, put it on Site A or put it someplace else. Let's not let the needs of our community, you know, be subject to their planning that we've been waiting for all these years.
Okay, well,
Mr.
let me
Albert.
respond to that. First of all, PSTA doesn't need another bus station. They were gonna put money into the small station they have to accommodate their bigger buses. They've always talked about an intermodal center, whether green light passed or not, whether we get rail or not. An intermodal center, especially with all the stuff that they're getting into now. We need, you know, one of the plans is to get buses from Tampa. It's just a good site on the corner of Myrtle and Court for an intermodal center. PSTA has conceptually drawn plans, and they brought them to the city. There were several different plans a year ago. Went to planning. Planning says, in our downtown, you have to conform to this or that. So that's been on hold. It's not that they haven't given us plans. The other thing is then that they got funding for the plans, which they did. Now they're looking for funding for construction. That's one of the reasons that I'm going up to Tallahassee tomorrow to represent, to see if I can talk up to some of our legislators about funding for this, and then also with Blanton, with Ford Pinellas, our MPO, getting funding there. There's certain things that we need to do that, you know, we haven't been doing. So I'm really trying to push that along. I know it's a frustrating thing. PSTA does have plenty of money right now. It's in 2 years, in 2022. Unless something happens, that's when we kind of run out of money. But something will happen in the interim. And this is a big thing for us in Clearwater, with connecting to Tampa and connecting to the beach. So this does have something to do with our people in Clearwater. It's not just a PSTA issue. It is a Clearwater growth issue. And as Jay said, I mean, Jay and I, we've been talking about this for 15 years. I mean, it's not something that we have just come up with overnight. It just takes a long time for things like this to develop. And then Clearwater we have to make our minds up as to where we're putting our, you know, city hall and our parking garages and everything. So a lot of pieces of the puzzle have to come together, and I think that's why we're talking.
So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Yep, and we'll be bringing back some more discussion items, because I think there needs to be more conversation fleshing out. We may know a little bit more from PSTA. We'll see if we can pull some more of their information into the conversation, if they're comfortable in sharing that information with us. But I've heard enough to give me some insight as to kind of how we should have that next conversation.
And council, for the future, you know, maybe we need to do a better job of reporting to each other what our conversations are with these various boards that we meet with. Because when we're having this discussion and we're hearing, or at least I'm hearing now for the first time, that, we've been doing all this and implying that our staff hasn't been responding to PSTA.
Didn't say they
Well,
weren't
you
responding.
well, you did, because you said that, staff has received information and we're on hold. Well, that's the first that I've ever heard of this, whether it's accurate or not. Maybe we need to have reports, on a regular basis, as council members to each other, on these board meetings that we go to once a month or once a quarter. Is, for the future, because, it's important.
It is.
Yeah.
I agree.
Let me make just one comment about staff interaction. It's not uncommon for one agency to present a plan, the other agency reacts to it, they then go back and determine how they're going to react to the feedback they've got from the other agency. So I think that's the scenario that we're talking about. PSTA had some plans, they brought it to us, we react to it, and the reason why it's on hold is that PSTA obviously has to make decisions about how they're going to react to whatever it is that we told them. So that's just a normal part of the business. I mean, that's not anything unusual. If they never make up their minds, that's what they're going to do, then it's going to be difficult for the board to know, the PSTA board, or even our rep to know, what the next step is.
And part of the thing was, with Avishek, their engineer, actually told me last week at the meeting, it was a week before that, he said, we're on hold because he knew we were having this discussion as far as one of the sites being for City Hall, their site that they were planning on having their intermodal center. So things don't move real fast when, like you say, different agencies talk to each other. It's, and, we're part of it. We have to make decisions, to get the wheels moving. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
More fun.
Ready to go?
4.1.
Sure. Approve the request from the owner of property addressed at 2001 Gulf to Bay Boulevard and 511 South Hercules Avenue to vacate a portion of a dedicated right-of-way described as that part of lots 1 and 12 Midway subdivision, according to the plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 13, page 4 of the public records of Pinellas County, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Mr. Burzak.
Good morning, Robert Burzak, Real Estate Services Coordinator. The city has no municipal use for the platted right-of-way proposed to be vacated and will retain a 10-foot wide drainage and utility easement to support existing and future facilities. City stakeholders have reviewed the vacation application and have no objections.
Any questions on 4.1? Mr. Condon.
I notice this is just north of where the new fire station is going in. Am I right on that?
Yes.
And there wouldn't ever be a need for a longer driveway or something for those fire trucks to exit? Are they planning to go right out onto Hercules?
I mean, they're in the, still in the design phase for the fire station, but the city is retaining a utility easement over that area, so it shouldn't affect the fire station.
Any other questions, council? We'll have this on our agenda Thursday night. 4.2.
Approve the request from SP Trail LLC and the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County as trustee of the Pinellas County Land Assembly Trust Woodlawn Trail applicant to vacate a 70-foot drainage and utility easement as recorded in Official Records Book 5880, page 343 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, on real property located at 803 Woodlawn Loop, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Mr. Burzak again.
Thank you. The applicant was required to vacate a drainage and utility easement as a condition of the development order for the construction of Woodlawn Trail Affordable Housing Community. City staff have reviewed and support the vacation request.
Any questions on 4.2? Be on our agenda Thursday night. 4.3.
Accept a drainage and utility easement from SP Trail LLC and the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County as trustee of the Pinellas County Land Assembly Trust Woodlawn Trail for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city drainage and utility facilities on real property located at 803 Woodlawn Loop, and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Burzak again.
Thank you. The drainage and utility easement will provide the city rights for construction, installation, and maintenance of drainage and utility facilities at the Woodland Trail Affordable Housing Community.
Any questions on 4.3? Again, on our agenda Thursday night, 4.4.
Authorize purchase orders to multiple vendors as listed for various traffic signal parts in an amount not to exceed $900,000 for the period of March 6, 2020 through November 3rd, 2022, pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5641D, other government entities' contracts, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mayor and council, we have a new employee, a new presenter, Jesse Rhodes. Is customary for you all to be nice. It's his first time, since he is asking for $900,000. So he didn't get a chance to pick his poison, if you will, so.
This is not good.
Mr. Rhodes?
No, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm up here for my first time asking for $900,000. As the city manager said, my name is Jesse Rhodes, I'm in traffic operations. I'm the lead engineering specialist. My main task with them is the supervision of signals and signs. That's why I'm here. We are requesting authorization for a purchase order to multiple vendors for various traffic signal parts. The amount will not exceed $900,000, and it will be covered from the period of March 6, 2020 through November 3rd, 2022. This will be the first time traffic operations has ever requested a 3-year purchase order, although we currently purchase products from each of these 3 vendors every year, either by the use of P-card or by bid. The sum of $900,000 is derived from spending $100,000 for 3 years for 3 different vendors. And these vendors are already existing vendors from FDOT, so we are piggybacking off of one of their existing contracts, which is good until November of 2022. Current year funding is available in the CIP Traffic Signals Fund. Future year funding will be requested as part of the annual budget process for 2021 and 2022. Any questions?
Any questions of staff on 4.4? Mr. Poglaze?
So I can't be real nice, but I do have to ask some background questions. So because it is 900,000, is this a schedule of repair and maintenance that will cover 3 years, or do we have that much failing equipment that we're spending that much, or is this a traditional normal schedule of repair and replacement? And this is also for new equipment too, not just parts, correct?
Yes, normal maintenance, and I think the big purchases come in with emergency repairs.
Okay.
Equipment we run out of throughout the year, equipment we need, in which only maybe one vendor supplies.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to stay on top of things.
And since you're our engineer of signs and lights, this is only for traffic lights, not signs, because we still make our own signs, correct?
Yeah, this is signals only.
Okay. Okay. So this has nothing to do with the electrical, we don't do all that ourselves, right? Is that a separate?
We don't supply the power, but as far as electronics, we do.
Okay.
The signal cabinets, the load, all the wiring.
Okay.
All
Perfect.
device.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Hamilton?
No,
Oh, okay. Mr. Condiff?
The document we've been given is 150 pages long.
Is it? I'm sorry.
I have to confess I've not read all of it.
Okay.
I have perused it. Is this just our bid, or does that include other communities and FDOT's purchases as well?
This includes FDOT. The document you have is their contract with the vendors that I'm proposing we spend money with. It's only 3 vendors out of that entire contract. I think they have a whole page of vendors. But we're only using Econolite, Temple, and TCS.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Rhodes, you can pass the baton to Mr. Bertels
Okay.
after I ask this question. This is just for our equipment and repairs. It has nothing to do with the synchronization of the lights.
Well, a lot of this equipment that we purchase on a regular basis is involved in the synchronization of the signals, yes.
Is it going to improve the synchronization, or is it going to? That's my pet peeve. That's why I wanted to pass the baton to you,
We
Mr.
always
Bertels.
endeavored to do the best with the synchronization. One of the things you might notice is Fort Harrison has been recently coordinated. It wasn't coordinated for many years because we were trying to reduce the delay to the pedestrians and cars in the downtown area. That section between Court and Drew, but now we have coordinated that. And it's working pretty good. We had a request from another government agency recently to look into that. But yes, all these parts are for repair and new work.
Okay. So it's not with the system that controls the synchronization, because that's not ours.
Well, there are two synchronization systems. We have the ATMS system where we have an interlocal agreement with the county. And they buy all the parts for that.
Okay.
This is for our legacy system, we call it, which is everything outside of the county partnership we have, which is about 85 intersections.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, Mr. Rhodes, you can be glad that I'm not going to be here, next month, because synchronization of lights just drives me batty. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent?
Yeah.
4.5.
Approve supplemental work order 1 to Black and Veatch for support services related to Americans Water Infrastructure Act in the amount of $101,025 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Brown, the engineering manager for utilities. The purpose of this project is to comply with America's Water Infrastructure Act. There's the requirement to conduct a risk and resilience assessment of the city's potable water infrastructure. The work includes performing threat, consequence, and vulnerability analyses, in addition to various workshops with public utilities, engineering, police, fire, information technology, and finance departments. The goal is to better understand the city's ability to respond to various threats to its potable water system and identify necessary improvements. Happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions of staff on 4.5? Consent?
Yep. Thank you.
Ms. Call 5.1.
Appoint Michael D. Brewster to the Sister Cities Advisory Board as a local business community representative with a term to expire March 31st, 2024. Council members, Terrence Gordine was serving in that capacity as a local business community representative, and completed his second term. Mr. Brewster is the only applicant that we have on file that fits that category.
He is a Palm Harbor resident. Do the members of this board have to be Clearwater residents?
They do not.
Consent?
Yes.
Second reading on 6.1. Any questions on 6.1, council? Mr. Horn, do you have anything further for us?
No, Mayor. I do not.
Ms. Aiken?
Yes, sir.
Council?
No.
If not, our meeting is at 6 o'clock on March the 6th. Nope, March the 5th. We need to change it. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.